buy from people, which is exactly why in this unit we're talking about selling you first. It's really what goes on in the sales process. Too often we get caught up in the what do I do or how do I do it? These are the questions that come to me all the time, but it's more important to be thinking about who do you need to be in your business, in your world, in your life, in your relationships, and how are you going to connect with your customers? And you've probably heard before is that people buy from people they know, like, and trust. So in this unit, I really want to dig deep into your reason for doing what you're doing, how people make their decisions to buy from you, some tips on how you can set yourself up for success using branding, and the psychology around connecting with individuals. So that's what we're going to be covering. And the first thing I want to get into is the reason why. Now, there's a couple things we can talk about on the why. I always talk about what is your why. And I remember years ago we talked about this, and it was really what's the thing that gets you up early in the morning and keeps you up late at night? And really, why should people buy from you? Why would they believe that you're doing something special? Why would they connect with you? And that reason why is the thing that's going to drive you day in and day out, and the thing that actually is going to make your selling job so much easier. And if you don't have that reason why, or you're not really sure about why people buy from you, that's probably your first challenge. And so what I would ask you to do is sit down and just craft out, why is this important to me? Why would people buy from me? Right? What do I believe in that I can share with other people? And so if we think about this in the way that people make decisions, they make decisions in very predictable ways. So there's 5 buying decisions, and they go in this order. The first buying decision is they buy you. They decide if you're the person that they should do business with. And when we talk about the sales conversation, what's happening is that through your ability to ask questions, share insights, to paraphrase, to get them to agree on a need, now you've actually sold yourself way before anything else. Once they agree that you're the right person to buy from, then they decide if you get hit by a bus, can your company deliver on your promises? And they think, is this a company I can associate myself with? Do we have this shared values? And if I'm buying from this company long term, would I feel good about telling people that I buy from them? So that's the second buying decision. And then we get into product. We decide, what do I want to buy? How much do I want to pay? And is this the right time to buy? But most likely, the conversation starts with what is it and how much is it? And so we end up getting caught in that question and answer kind of situation in our sales conversations, when in fact we need to resist that urge like we just talked about in the last section and go back to really selling you and having those questions, giving those insights, and resisting the urge to say, here's what we have, here's how much it's going to be. Because if we go too fast into those buying decisions, we lose the traction that we're creating in our relationships. So really understand that people will buy from people, and understand that more importantly, that you're the product. It does not matter what you sell. To an extent it does, but it doesn't really matter. People will pay more if they perceive the value, and the value comes from your ability to help them solve a problem. So if you're really good at what you do, you can charge more, you get more customers because you essentially are the product. One of the things that I see people struggle with all the time is this dreaded question, what do you do? We do a lot of networking events, and people go in and they just sort of show up and they say, so what do you do? And we know that question's coming. And so we end up grabbing, our business card, and I say, oh, my name is Joe and I do sales consulting and blah, blah, blah. And I just vomit my business crap all over the other person. And then they're waiting for their turn. Remember, like that skipping rope game, for them to jump in and say, my name's Bill and I do marketing, blah, blah, and they just vomit all over me. And so we end up doing this thing all the time, networking, where we're just basically collecting all these cards. We go home, we have that stack of cards, and we say, hey, look at me, I networked. But in reality, that's not what networking is. That's not what connecting with other people really is about. When people ask you what you do, you should be thinking about why you do it. Right? Not what you do. I think remember the movie Fight Club it's that you're not your job, you're not your title. It's really what you believe. And that's what people connect with those. So you want to resist that temptation to just jump in and say all the stuff that you do. Nobody cares what your title is or your business. They want to know what you believe in. And there's a wonderful TED Talk I'm going to link below by a guy named Simon Sinek. And he talks about the golden circle, the what, why, and how. And that so you need to move away from the what and into the how and into really why. And so he says people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. So if you're not clear on what you believe in and what you're excited about, that's going to come through in your conversations, and it doesn't matter what you sell. People buy you, okay? Now, when I talk to people, I always ask, what is selling? And they say, well, it's solving problems. It's answering questions. It's being a resource, blah, 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 all this stuff. And we get all these answers. My favorite definition is that selling is simply the transfer of emotion. Now, if you've sold one product to one customer, if they've been happy, and you start to learn over time, remember we talked last time about becoming an expert, you start to see how it works, your belief starts to take flight. We talked last time, be confident. Right? Your belief starts to grow. And as you start to grow that belief, all you simply have to do is through your questions, through your conversations, and through who you are, just get other people to believe what you believe. If you can do that, the sales conversation becomes so much easier. If they don't believe that you believe in this, it's much harder to sell anything. And so we always talk about, the 3 beliefs. You got to believe in yourself, your company, and your product. And all you need to do is help other people see what you believe. And if through that conversation that they feel they're going to be a good fit, it's much easier to buy. So that's all you're doing is just helping people buy from you because you believe in something. And I remember years ago, I used to have this quote on the door of my office. And it just reminded me that it didn't matter if people bought from me. It mattered that I served them, that I helped them, that I was the person they would go to as their first point of contact in the world that I live in and in my community. And so that they come to me and say, hey, I have this question. I have this idea. Can I run this past you? And inherently, what it was is I was lazy. And I knew that if I built a really solid personal brand, if I built a really solid way to communicate with people, that over time, eventually they would just come in and say, hey, I heard you're the guy that can do this. Can I send my friend to you? Or can you talk to me about this? Or they say, hey, I'm ready to sign up. And that's great. That's how you build this long-term business. So when you're talking to people, it's not so much whether they're going to buy from you or not, but can you make them better or happier, like it says on this quote, Mother Teresa. And that's always been a sort of a philosophy of mine in selling, is it doesn't matter if they buy. There's no scarcity of people that are going to buy something from you. Just get in your head that you need to connect with them and help them just see things differently. And when we talked about in our last one where we're positioning our offer, that's how you build a non-competitive space, is that you're just the first point of contact for this conversation in a better way than anybody else is doing it. And on this one, I love, first of all, I love the picture of the sloth, but this was a goal of mine this past year where I said, when I listen to sales calls, when I listen to myself speaking, how quickly do I actually get into my natural rhythm? How quickly do I get into like, wow, we're having a real conversation versus, that sort of everybody's kind of feeling each other out at the beginning. It's very, very formal, very sort of inauthentic until we get into, do we connect? And it takes a minute, maybe 2, until you're actually speaking like 2 humans. When I switched into this mode of being authentic as fast as possible, eliminating distractions, getting into the right space so that we can have the real conversation as quickly as possible, it allows me to take control of that call. It allows you to become somebody of influence and to be able to say, how can I help you? And you're really into it. And they say, wow, I like connecting with this person and something is up. And we're going to get into that in a second here about how the brain actually works. But I want you to ask yourself, how fast are you authentic in everything that you're doing? Or do you wait for the situation to be right, for the scenario to actually be a place where you would feel comfortable? So you got to be as comfortable as possible in all of these situations so that you can be authentic quickly. And so when we look at how the brain actually works, is there's a wonderful concept called neuroassociations. I remember years ago learning about this in a Tony Robbins audio, and it's really about how our brain associates things. And it talks about how you can have things that are damaging for yourself and things that are beneficial for yourself. And the way that you think about things really sets you up for success. And when we apply it to how we interact with people, the first thing you want to think about is, what's the first and last thing they remember? All the stuff in the middle, it's not so bad. But what people remember is your first impression and how you left them. So any time that you walk into a room or you connect with a customer for the first time, that's the best time to be your best self. You can screw it up sometime in the middle, but work on that first impression. We always talk about first impressions or everything, but neurally, this is what happens: is your brain all of a sudden imprints that, and you're trying to create this sort of pattern interrupt. And then when you leave them, how do you leave? Do you leave on a high note? Remember, like George Costanza from Seinfeld, leaving on a high note? This is what you're trying to do with neuroassociations, is really connect with people instantly and lastly, and then you can have these conversations in the middle, but they're going to remember how you made them feel. And like I said, be a pattern interrupt. Be something that makes them go, that's different. Especially if you're out in sales or you're networking, you're talking to a bunch of people and you're thinking about this personal brand. What are you doing to stand out, right? What are you doing to be different than other people? How are you introducing yourself? How are you leaving people? Or are you just sort of being in part of this sort of everybody's lost in this sort of like maze of it's all the same. It's all mediocre conversations. So have great conversations and stand out. Now, this also applies to your offer and in your conversation. If you're not connecting with people, and what we said is that reptilian brain, if you're not exciting that brain and getting the limbic system involved, then you just get lost in all of the stuff. And so this is what you want to do when you're building your personal brand, when you're going out and meeting people, when you're having sales conversations. If you feel that you're not connecting, you need to interrupt that pattern, and you need to do something interesting by sharing a story or sharing an anecdote or just being different. And that's where that authenticity piece comes in. So the question I'll ask you is, how will you stand out and be remembered? And if you don't know that, I would write that down and say, how am I going to be different? How am I going to be on that island of one so people say, wow, this person is the best choice for this conversation? Not necessarily for your product or service, but for the conversation that you uniquely have. And that's what I want to ask you, is that what are you known for, right? If you're out there and talking to people and I introduced you, how should I do it? If you just say, well, I can help all sorts of people do all sorts of stuff, it's really hard for me to say, let me introduce you to Bill. Let me introduce you to Susie. I want you to be able to say unequivocally that if I introduce you, you say, you introduce me, I want you to say, this is Bill. He's awesome at finance and just understanding all the sort of moving parts. And if you're thinking about doing anything where you're going to buy anything, talk to Bill first. He's the guy you should go to, because in the world, everybody needs a guy, right? Everybody needs that guy or that girl, that woman that they have in their back pocket as a resource. And so if you get to be known for some specific thing that you can do, especially if you're in it before they're looking to buy. Remember we talked about the hidden market and how the best place to be is where you can educate the market. If you're having the conversations before people are looking to make a decision, now you get known for the person to have the conversation with before they're starting to buy, and you're in the place where there's more non-competitive deals and average deal size per customer. That's just how it works. Now you got to think then, thinking about being a sales hero, what is your superpower? What's that thing that if somebody sat down with you, every time you sat down with people, regardless of if they bought from you, that superpower that you have to be able to help them look at the world a little bit differently? We talked about your big idea and your offer, but really your superpower. What's the thing that you can claim is yours so people just want to meet with you and talk to you about the world? Then I want you to know, are you known for your business or for yourself? Do you represent, again, your job title, your position, your business? Or do people say, hey, I want to talk to you because I really like dealing with you and I know you've got a great business, but let's talk about how we can work together. So that's the difference there, is, are you known for your business or yourself? And again, most people, when they're talking, they just simply say what they do. And so when I usually do an intro conversation with a client, I say, tell me about your business. Why should people buy from you? What's the thing that you do? And they say, well, I can do this and this and this and this. And then the answer is, if I took your name off of this, and we just listed all of these things you just told me, could anybody else say they could do that? And most of the time we say, yeah. It's the same thing on resumes or on LinkedIn. If you're just listing all the stuff you do, why would anybody buy from you? You're just going to get lost in this mix of all the same people that can do all the same stuff as you. Okay, unless you're crazy, highly specialized in one specific thing, all the stuff doesn't matter. So you want to think about why you're doing, what you're known for, how you see unique things, how you help your customers see around corners, look at hidden opportunities, find options for them that they might not consider. You can get them to avoid potential landmines. Whatever it is that you can really do, that superpower, that's what you should be talking about, instead of saying, I do marketing, I do project management, I sell tires, I sell diapers. Whatever it is that you sell, nobody cares. They want to know, why should they talk to you? And so the question I'll ask you is, what's your brand stance? And the brand stance is that thing that you stand for, the reason that you would say yes to certain customers and no to other customers. And if you don't have a brand stance, build one. What do you want to stand for when you're out building your business? And so to think about building your brand as a process, it's quite simple. There's a couple things you can do. First of all, be consistent. Whatever you're doing, whatever you want people to know about you, be consistent across your social media, across your LinkedIn, your Facebook. One of the things and activities that I love to do is write out your full biography or your bio, like maybe a half a page of a bio, 400, 500 words, then write a shorter version of that. That's maybe a couple hundred words. And then write a micro version of that, which is maybe what would fit in maybe a Twitter or something like that. So you can have these different versions of your bio, so that if somebody says, send me something about you, or you're doing an introduction, you can send that bio. So your personal and digital brand is consistent across all of these channels. And if you're constantly having to say new things, or you don't know what to say, this is where you want to start from. So really get good at writing down your personal brand. The next one is a big one, is ask people. Just like I said, if I was to introduce you, what would you say? Now, the flip side of that is ask people that you know, hey, what do you say to others if you talked about what I do? And if these people aren't saying what you would like them to say, guess what? That's on you. That's your fault for not creating this. And I've had that happen so many times, as people go, I don't really know what you do. Or somebody says, I'm looking for, like, let's say, a business consultant or a strategist, and they list all these other people, but they don't list me. And I go, and first of all, you can get your feelings hurt for that. I would get my feelings hurt, but that's on me. If they don't know, that's because I haven't created that energy and that excitement. So if you want people to know what you do, go and see if they actually know what you do. Go and see if they actually talk about you in that way. And if they go, oh, I didn't know that's what it was, then you win, right? Now it's that perception versus reality. So really understand what your market, what your customers are saying about you, and call them up and say, hey, if you were to tell others what I do, what would you say? And they go, oh, okay, well, and if they're not getting it right, then you need to get better at helping them understand from the get-go. Then the big one is always test your language. Always, some people work on, they call these, like the 30-second elevator pitch or their unique value proposition, and they spend all this time trying to create it. For me, I spent all this time creating my bio and all these things, but it doesn't mean that that's the best thing. What matters is if you go out and test it. And here's the easy test that you can use. If you say this thing and people nod and smile, it's good. Keep saying that thing, right? That's a really good thing. So, hey, that works. So when you start saying, hey, this is what I'm about, this is my why, and they go, oh, that's really interesting, look at you, that's good. Keep doing that. However, if they stare blankly, it sucks. Stop saying it. It's just an easy test, so that when you're going and talking to people and you get crickets chirping on the other end, stop saying it. It's stupid. And that's one thing that if you allow yourself to think like that scientist and forget about being that lawyer like we talked about in our first unit, this will give you all sorts of room to have some fun and give you permission to try new things and be able to be okay with building that brand. So really help people see what you're all about. And the big one is, what is your story, right? If you haven't really sat down and thought about your story, I would say do that. Think about why you're doing what you're doing, where you've come from, what's this transition. And when you first talk to people, it's interesting for them to know why you're doing this. So help them see why you're doing this. What were you doing before this? What are you doing right now? Why is this exciting? And what are your goals? Where are you going with this? And why is this important? So that they start to see that it's more than product or price. They get to actually interact with a human who has a story, and more importantly, if you're somebody that they want to share their story with, that they want to be a part of your journey, and they can see themselves on the journey with you. And so really what you're trying to do in your personal branding, in selling yourself first, is you're connecting through shared values. Like we said, people want to work with people they know, like, and trust. And by selling yourself first, by being this person who people want to connect with, they will buy from you. If they don't buy from you, maybe the product or service wasn't exactly what they look for, but this is how you drive referrals. This is how you create brand gravity. This is how you educate the market. This is why you get to have an offer in all these non-competitive deals and position yourself differently than your competitors because of who you are and what you represent. And so I really hope that this got in your head today about, your personal brand and what you're trying to do and who you are. So what I want you to do is, first of all, below this, I'm going to send, you'll be able to see the what, how, and why activity, and really think about what you do, how you do it, and why you do it. And let's create some language around what's important to you. The next one is write down, like it says, one reason people should work with you. That one thing, that unique thing that you can do, and that, powerful tool in your arsenal that if they just sat down with you, this is the conversation they would have. And the third one, I want you to think, how do you want to be perceived? And then test that against how you're actually being perceived. And if there's a gap, that's what you want to work on to close that gap. And so that's what we're talking about. It's really, how do you create this personal brand that, enters the room before you ever do? This thing that everybody talks about, so that by the time you get there, they say, oh, I've been waiting to meet you because I heard you're the one who can do this. And that's what personal branding is all about. And so by doing that, it makes your sales conversations easier. It makes your offer so much easier. It allows you to reduce that resistance, like we've talked in the brain, and really connect with the segments and the people that want to buy from you. So in the next few units, we're going to be talking about how to now put this stuff to the test, how to test these simple systems, how to be able to go and get customers, and how to build the right mindset long-term for you to be able to make this work. So I'll see you in the next unit.